Imagine digging 50 kilometers under one of the world's busiest seas, with millions of tons of water pressing down, ready to drown everything in an instant. The Channel Tunnel was hailed as a miracle, but it was inches from total disaster. From floods that could bury workers alive to billions in debt that nearly buried the dream. This is the untold story of how the world's longest underwater tunnel almost collapsed. In 1802, Napoleon dreamed of invading Britain through a tunnel under the Channel, but war fears ended it. Fast forward to the 1880s. Engineers actually started digging from both sides, using horse-powered machines to bore trial tunnels. Excitement builds as they carve over a kilometer each way. Then, disaster strikes. Seawater bursts through porous rock, flooding shafts and forcing a frantic retreat. Workers scramble out as pumps fail against the relentless ingress. The UK government panics, visions of French troops pouring through like a secret invasion route. They halt everything, citing national security. Investors lose fortunes, and the project crumbles amid lawsuits and blame games. This wasn't just bad luck. It exposed the channel's deadly geology, unstable chalk that hides water pockets like booby traps. Decades later, in the 1970s, another attempt fizzled when costs skyrocket and politics sour. These failures haunted the 1980s team, whispering, "What if it happens again?" But they pushed on, armed with better tech. Or so they thought. And that's when geology entered the equation, the real gamble that turned digging into a high-stakes nightmare. And you won't believe how close they came to repeating history's curse. The seabed's chalk marl, just 20 meters thick in spots, was the only stable path through 75 meters of water and shifting sediments. But surveys revealed faults and porous zones like hidden landmines. One wrong move, and seawater could erupt like a geyser. Early borings hit water-bearing fissures, forcing constant grouting with cement to seal leaks before they turned catastrophic. Imagine workers in the dim, humid tunnels, hearing drips turn to rushes, knowing a breach could flood miles in minutes. The French side faced wetter, more fractured ground, where machines slogged through mud like spoils that threatened collapses. UK drills punched through drier chalk, but brittle upper layers risked cave-ins. These weren't hypotheticals. Real incidents saw pressure build, cracking linings and halting work for emergency fixes. Geologists worked round the clock, mapping every inch to avoid disaster. Yet the gamble paid off barely, with the tunnels meeting midpoint. But the fear lingered, one undetected fault, and it all ends. Next came the machines, tested by pressures that pushed them to the brink, and what followed was even wilder. Meet the beasts that clawed through hell. 11 colossal tunnel-boring machines, each weighing 1,100 tons, with spinning cutter heads like giant cheese graters shredding rock at 20 meters a day. But under the channel's crushing depths, these engineering marvels turned into fragile nightmares. On the French side, wetter rock turned the tunnels into saunas. Temperatures hit 50 degrees Celsius, cooking electronics and exhausting crews. Cutter discs, dulled in abrasive chalk, snapping off and jamming the works, forcing risky shutdowns deep underground. One machine ground to a halt when spoil clogged its conveyor, backing up debris like a blocked artery. Workers in hazmat suits crawled into the beast's belly for repairs, inches from spinning their final day. The British TBMs fared better in drier ground but still battled vibrations that loosened bolts and alignments. Precision was everything. Gyroscopes kept them on course, but a single glitch could veer them off, wasting millions. These breakdowns delayed schedules by weeks, spiking costs. Imagine the tension, lights flickering, alarms blaring, as engineers raced to revive the monsters before the project stalled forever. They triumphed, but barely. And then came the flooding fears, where every drip threatened total disaster. Every second under the channel, the sea whispered threats through tiny cracks. Water ingress was a constant battle, not a maybe, echoing the 1880s floods that drowned earlier dreams. With 100 meters of ocean overhead, pressure turned minor leaks into jets that could erode rock like acid. Workers installed prefab concrete segments behind the TBM ceiling with hydraulic rams, but gaps formed under the strain. On the French end, saturated chalk meant pumps ran non-stop, sucking out thousands of liters hourly. One documented surge overwhelmed seals, flooding a section and forcing evacuations. Crews waded knee-deep, hearts pounding, as they injected grout to stem the tide. The service tunnel, dug first for safety, became a lifeline, venting water and providing escape routes. But the nightmare scenario loomed. A full breach could cascade, collapsing linings and burying miles. Engineers added probes to detect water ahead, but surprises hit hard. These fears weren't overblown. Lives depended on vigilance. Next came the cost catastrophe, pushing the project to the edge of financial collapse. Money can kill a mega project faster than any flood. The Channel Tunnel started at a modest $7.62 billion in 1987, but by 1994, it ballooned to $14.7 billion, an 80% overrun that turned investors' dreams into a financial abyss. Why? Geological surprises demanded extra grouting and reinforcements, while machine delays added months of wages for 13,000 workers. Contractor disputes erupted over unpaid extras, with firms like Boyage demanding billions more for unforeseen risks. Eurotunnel teetered on bankruptcy in the early 90s, shares plummeting as banks threatened to pull funding. Governments refused bailouts, sticking to the private finance rule, forcing desperate debt restructurings. Imagine boardrooms in chaos, executives scrambling for loans, while tunnels sat half-dug. The press dubbed it a black hole sucking in cash. One low point, 1994's near collapse, when costs hit $19 billion equivalent, triggering lawsuits and resignations. Yet they clawed back through refinancing, opening just in time. This was a survival against odds, but the human toll. Behind the steel and concrete, real lives hung in the balance, and 10 workers paid the ultimate price. These were the harsh realities of a relentless grind. The project was repeatedly tested by serious on-site incidents, including a major fall during cliff blasting at the UK portal and a critical equipment accident inside the dust-filled, low-visibility tunnels. French side accidents claimed more. A worker suffered a severe electrical incident while repairing wiring in 50 degrees Celsius heat, while others were injured by runaway spoil carts on slippery rails. Safety protocols existed: hard hats, harnesses, escape pods every 375 meters, but the pace pushed limits. Exhaustion led to slips. One fatal incident saw a man trapped under a collapsed segment during lining installation. Families grieved as the project paused for investigations, but the clock ticked. Delays meant more debt. These tragedies fueled redesigns, like better ventilation, to clear fumes that caused blackouts. Yet the toll exposed the human fragility in this machine-driven war against nature. Survivors spoke of nightmares, the constant roar, masking dangers. It wasn't just rock that broke, spirits did too. And then came the alignment anxiety, threatening to undo all their progress. After years of digging blind from opposite shores, the tunnels had to meet perfectly or face ruin. On December 1, 1990, tension gripped the control rooms as UK and French TBMs neared the handshake point, 22 kilometers from each coast. Gyroscopes and lasers guided them, but the channel's currents warped surveys, risking a devastating offset. Imagine the stakes. A mere half-meter misalignment meant redrilling, costing millions in months. Crews held their breath as probes pierced the final rock. Success. Workers Graham Fagg and Philippe Cosette shook hands through a tiny hole, the error under 0.5 meters. Cheers erupted, but it was no fluke. Earlier anxieties peaked when French machines veered slightly from wet rock, forcing frantic corrections. The service tunnel breakthrough months prior tested the tech, revealing glitches in navigation gear under pressure. One wrong calculation, and the $15 billion investment crumbles into mismatched holes. In the end, precision won, but the fear etched lessons for future projects. But political pitfalls that delayed everything appeared. You'll see how close the whole thing came to being scrapped. For 25 agonizing years before shovels hit dirt, UK and French governments waffled, killing momentum. In the 1960s, plans advanced, but UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson axed it in 1975 over economic woes, stranding test borings. Thatcher's 1980s revival demanded no public funds, but French hesitations over routes sparked rows. Military hawks in Britain echoed 1880s fears. A tunnel, that's an invasion highway. Debates raged in Parliament, delaying treaties and eroding investor trust. One pivotal pitfall, 1986's treaty signing, came after endless negotiations, but Brexit-like tensions simmered. Changing administrations flipped priorities. Mitterrand pushed unity, but UK skeptics stalled funding guarantees. These delays inflated costs by billions, as inflation bit and tech aged. Imagine engineers ready, but bureaucrats bickering were halted mid-prep. The project teetered until private consortiums stepped in, but the scars showed in rushed timelines. Indecision buried earlier dreams. Yet, they forged ahead. Then design disasters that forced last-minute saves showed up. Mid-build, the nightmares ignited literally. Fire risks under the sea turned designs upside down, forcing frantic overhauls that nearly torched the timeline. Early plans underestimated heat. TBMs generated 50 degrees Celsius saunas, plus train friction could spark blazes in enclosed spaces. In 1990, engineers scrambled to install massive fans every 250 meters, pumping 250 cubic meters of air per second. But the real scare? Potential fires in the 50 kilometers tube with no easy escape. A 1980s shuttle designed for cars raised alarms. Exhaust and crashes could turn it into a final trap. They pivoted to rail only, adding fireproof linings and suppression systems mid-construction. Costs soared. One change alone added $1.7 billion. Documented incidents during build, like electrical shorts, previewed horrors. Workers evacuated as smoke-filled sections. The 1996 post-opening fire validated fears, melting trucks but containing damage thanks to these fixes. Without them, catastrophe. This was survival. Imagine the panic, blueprints redrawn overnight, crews retrofitting in tight spaces. They pulled it off, but barely. Final stretch, contractor conflicts that brought it all to a boiling point. You have to see this endgame. The final blow nearly came from within. Bitter feuds between Eurotunnel and contractors like the Trans-Manche Link Consortium, turning allies into enemies. By 1992, disputes exploded over scope creep. Extra grouting for leaks, machine fixes, and safety add-ons weren't in original bids. Contractors claimed $3 billion in overruns, halting work in protest. Eurotunnel balked, citing fixed-price contracts, sparking lawsuits that clogged courts. Shares tanked as threats of abandonment loomed. One standoff saw French drills pause, idling thousands. Banks intervened, forcing arbitrations, but trust shattered. Executives resigned amid accusations of mismanagement. The root, unforeseen geology, and designs that evolved, leaving bills unpaid. Imagine tense negotiations in smoke-filled rooms, with the tunnel half done, vulnerable to weather and sabotage fears. They settled in 1994, but the damage added $2 billion more. This was the clash of ambition versus reality. In the end, compromises saved it, opening to fanfare. But these conflicts exposed the fragility. Any walk out, and the dream died. We've uncovered the nightmares. Now, reflect. The Channel Tunnel stands as a testament to defiance.